Hey, folks. What's up? How's it going? All right. Boom. How's it going, everybody? So good to see you. Man, we're the opening act here. We better show up.
High pressure.
High pressure. Super. Well, welcome to our little fireside chat. I guess to start with, I'm Dalton. I am a managing director and partner at Y Combinator. Y Combinator has funded over 5,000 companies over the years, including all sorts of household names like Airbnb and DoorDash and Stripe and whatnot, which is great. And I personally have funded, I think, 1,000 of the 5,000 where I was the group partner, including whatnot. Yeah.
And then I guess for those who don't know, I'm Grant, co-founder, CEO of Whatnot, and Whatnot's the largest live stream shopping platform in the US. So you can imagine it as a place where anyone can be kind of like a QVC style host or their own auctioneer. Every year there are many sellers who make over 8 figures, and the number of sellers making over $100,000 grew about 80% last year.
Awesome. And so, look, I'm really excited to talk to Grant because I got to see the whole story. I did not know the founders of Whatnot before they applied to YC, and so my first interaction with you and your company was just reading your application as complete strangers and then interviewing you. So do you want to start at the beginning of just how the company came together and how we first met?
Sure. So, company came together probably a few months before we met Dalton, and it was just me and my co-founder Logan, and we'd both started companies in the past. And we were at jobs at other places, and we were just wanted to get back to building. And so we're like, we are going to start a company, full stop. And we had no idea what we were actually going to do. We just agreed on a set of principles, which was we're going to be incredibly user-centric, we're going to move incredibly fast, and we're going to take big swings. And then what we decided to do was build a marketplace only for Funko Pops. And for those who don't know, Funko Pops...
Well, let's ask, who here knows what a Funko Pop is? All right, so not a lot.
Yeah, they're like
Explain what a Funko Pop is.
Funko Pops are little collectible vinyl dolls that are primarily collected by like adults. And you probably, for those who didn't raise their hands, you probably know what they are. If you just like Google a photo of one, you'll recognize them because they're everywhere once you know what they are. And so I guess like we started with that, and then we applied to YC. At that point, we actually didn't have a product, and so we built it the week and a half before YC so that we could get some customers to use our product. And we met Dalton because we showed up for our interview, which was like 5 or 10 minutes for that.
10
rapid fire questions. And we had been preparing a ton beforehand and trying to get at least a few customers so we could answer those questions right.
Yeah, and again, my recollection is, wow, this is a great couple of co-founders with great technical expertise. I knew you had built marketplaces before as an employee at Facebook and elsewhere, and so had your co-founder. And I was like, okay, I don't know about this whole marketplace for dolls for adults, but they seem like great builders, and they seem high energy, and they're moving really fast. They didn't actually have any traction at all. But it seemed kind of fun to work with these guys. So
yeah, we had a little bit of traction. I can remember.
Yeah, you had a product. I remember downloading.
A little bit. I think when you start a marketplace, as probably many folks in this room know, it's very hard to get started because how do you get buyers if you don't have sellers, and how do you get sellers if you don't have buyers? And so, part of the reason that we started with just Funko Pops, obviously we had ambitions to be much bigger than that. We weren't going to quit our good jobs to just start a really small and niche kind of company. But you want to create a really great user experience for someone. And when you are a really small startup, one of the only ways that you can create a really good user experience that competes with a bunch of other large companies is to start very, very, very narrow. Because the early days of Whatnot, we were just 3.5 people. And so we just started incredibly, incredibly narrowly. We just did Funko Pops. Investors and many other folks were, questioned us in the early days. But you have to do a bunch of things that don't inherently look scalable in the early days to drive a really, really great user experience. And I could get more into all of the sort of hacks and so on that we did too.
Yeah, I think the great thing to share with this audience is many of you have probably heard the phrase, do things that don't scale. It's like a Paul Graham quote. And what I really appreciate about Whatnot is how much you guys lived that and actually define what that means and define, I think people are like, yeah, do things that don't scale. I get it, Dalton, whatever. Kind of knowing this in theory and putting it into practice at your startup are so different. It's so much less glamorous than people think. So talk about all the unglamorous things that you did.
and so I'd say, I'll tell a couple stories, but I'd say like the anchor points on the early stories that allowed us to kind of scale and get to where we are today is, one, we were incredibly user-oriented. And so to steal some of the YC stuff, build something that people want. So you always have to be doing that. And then you do have to do some things that don't scale. And so when we started the marketplace, we're like, okay, we don't have enough supply for people to buy. And so we're like, okay, we're going to scrape the internet and like cross-list all of these listings. And so we scraped all of these places and used UPC codes. And then as we did that, we realized that there can be like 30 different products per UPC for Funko Pops, and when we put it on the internet and marketed it, we were losing tons of money. And so then we had to go incredibly deep into how do we fix this, and then we found some better data sources, and then I can remember at like midnight playing around in R and building a pricing algorithm, because once we got the product mappings right, we were still getting hammered and mispricing things because we didn't take into account liquidity. So you can get like market prices by scraping, think eBay, Mercari, all these other marketplaces that have products. But if you then sell so basically, just to re-clarify, we basically scrape all these marketplaces and relist it on our site. And as you do that, you can pull the prices, but it's also selling in those other places. And sometimes if there's not enough liquidity, which means there's not enough availability of the product, you can sell it for a price that you can't fulfill it for, and we had to go super deep. And I can remember going in R at night and building liquidity into the pricing equation to then do that. And then as we did that, we started to add buyers to the platform, and it started to grow. And one of the things I didn't clarify, when we built the marketplace in the early days, when we went through YC, is it wasn't truly a marketplace because it was only us selling. And so we actually hadn't built the sell side. We built the sell side as we were going through YC. And as we did that, we're like, well, why would anyone want to sell here? Because although we had buyers, you were going to sell way more on eBay. And so so to solve that problem, we also bootstrapped the other side of the marketplace. And we built a direct integration with a bunch of other marketplaces, including eBay, which I don't know to this day why they allowed us to do that. But we ended up getting the permissions to do it. And so maybe a month and a half into YC, we made Whatnot such that if you were a seller and you listed on Whatnot, you would sell more because we had our buyers and eBay's buyers, and our eBay account was really, really good. Now that came with all sorts of gnarly stuff. If you don't control the inventory and you're doing refunds, returns, customer service, it's an absolute nightmare. And that was all the stuff that I was doing until the very late hours of the night to preserve and make the experience.
And look, hopefully to all of you in the audience, you can see just how thoughtful and deep he was going into this stuff and was so obsessed with it. And I would compare this at the other end of the spectrum of a founder's like, hey, I launched a marketplace, no one's buying, better buy some Instagram ads. That's what I would call like the default answer that people would have of trying to get a marketplace off the ground. And so just the amount of care and thoughtfulness that you put into this micro stuff is like such a rare talent.
Look, I mean, I think at the end of the day, and for those who are doing their own startups, it actually boils down to a very simple principle, which is whoever your consumer is, why are they going to use what you have built? And you have to be able to articulate that in great detail if you're going to build a great product. And to be honest, even today as we build Whatnot, and I think today we have like a 200+ person engineering team, and I work with our PMs or our EMs in building it. I still make them articulate why this thing is going to be good, because if you don't know who it's for and how you are going to like create something great for them, you just won't do it. And so you can't like build and then hope a thing will happen. You have to will it to life and make sure that the user experience is very good.
Excellent. And so these are the humble beginnings. You all did not raise much money. You didn't have many employees, but you focused really carefully at the small things. Again, do you want to just give a flavor? And this is before you had live streaming. Many of you, if you're familiar with Whatnot as a product, live streaming is what you associate with, right?
Yeah.
Just tell them a quick bit of that story.
So I guess, origin days of Whatnot were we thought there was something around collectibles, and we thought there was something around social commerce, because a lot of people in collectibles, they're often buying the thing as an excuse just to have a shared interest with someone. So like the collectible is like a sideshow to the community and interaction people have. And we started off with like a much more bread and butter, think eBay with a few, social features layered on top. And we were just Funko Pops. And this was right before COVID took over the world. So this was January, February 2020. And so we're building that product, and it's growing nicely. It's growing like 30, 40% month over month. And so we're like, this is great. People are going to love what we're building, and we're going to raise money, and we're going to, scale this thing. And then we went to go and raise money towards the end of YC, and with COVID taking over the world, and basically every investor would not hand us any money. I raised a couple $100,000 through friends who felt bad for me. And just to put that in context, today, and again, the mark of a good company is not fundraising. But just to put it in context, we've raised about $450 million now. And so, the mark of a good company is you deliver something great to a large number of people, and you can extract some value from that for the work that you do. And so, so that's where we are. And we were in the Bay Area, but we moved to Phoenix because we didn't have enough money, and we were like, we need to save money. And so we had the proverbial garage, but it was in Phoenix, and it was like 120 degrees outside and 130 degrees in the garage, and we were packing and selling Funkos from there. So so that was kind of the early days, and I can get into how we kind of morphed into live, if that's helpful.
Yeah, why don't you tell them the quick live theme? Because again, I want to set this up. Again, maybe not everyone knows this, but Whatnot is the fastest growing marketplace of all time, full stop. Like, I'm not qualifying this, right, man? Like,
it's pretty close. If that's not true, it's pretty damn close.
Yeah, so this isn't like, of this in this market. This is a really fast-growing, large company. And so this is why it's key to hear these humble beginning stories of how they got it off the ground, because that is so hard to replicate. So again, tell them quickly about the live streaming growth hack, like how you got that off the ground.
And so, the principle, and again, like, I think building a great startup does boil down to like a few small things. And certainly one of those is just like, listen to your users, talk to your users, understand their problems and where you can apply solutions. And so as we built Whatnot, every day we would talk to our buyers, we'd talk to our sellers, we were really integrated in the community. And we could see a lot of our sellers using social media in interesting ways to sell things. One of the interesting ways they were using social media was to do live streams and to hold auctions in the comments. And I saw this happening. I invited my co-founder into one of the live streams. I'm like, this is really cool. And then we got into a bidding war with each other. We're like, this thing is super engaging. But there was all sorts of things that were broken about it. The latency was bad. Product fulfillment was bad. Handling payments was bad. Handling inventory was bad. And so we literally, the next 2 days, we're like, what if we built this on Whatnot? How cool would that be? I'm coming at you live from Whatnot. It feels right. Do we think we can do it? How would we do it? And then my co-founder got really excited about it, locked himself in his room for 3 weeks, and came out with our live shopping product. And then because he spent 3 weeks coding for 18 hours a day, and that's no exaggeration, he was too scared to use the thing because he'd never built anything in video, and he built like some complicated low latency live video stuff and built all his own infrastructure too. So I went live, and I sold out $5,000 worth of Funko Pops in 2.5 hours, which was more than I sold on eBay in the prior year. And it's not as if I'm an entertaining kind of person. I'm not in any capacity. And so, we basically stayed close to our users, built this thing. It looked like it was magical from the beginning. I think that's why you kind of know when you have product market fit. You just feel it. And then literally we finished that night at midnight. We're like, whoa, that was amazing. The next morning, I think we were 5.5 people at that point. We said, drop everything you're doing. We're a live shopping company now. And from there, it's been a wild ride.
That's my memory of it. I remember when you first told me about it in the 6 months into the pandemic or 4 months into the pandemic. I don't know. I was pretty excited. Like I was immediately excited when you told me this was working. So
Yeah, I remember calling Dalton. I'm like, Dalton, I think we got something. Like I think it's special, but we need some more money because like we need some engineers because this thing's falling over, and and it was falling over. But I was always cautiously optimistic. I still live by the fact that only the paranoid survive, and so I tend to try and look at all the things that are going to go wrong so I can get ahead of those things.
excellent. So again, to zoom out for what Whatnot looks like today, one of the things that I'm especially excited about or proud of is how many people are like full-time sellers, and you have this entire ecosystem of people earning tons of money as sellers. Do you want to just give people a sense of like how you've, I don't know, growth hacked that or how that's scaling?
So I think maybe the helpful analog, when you think about live stream shopping, it's not really about QVC or it's not really about live streams. It's kind of the best digital replacement for a physical store. Because you can go in there, you can talk to people who are there, you can talk to the person, you can see the object. And so a lot of what you actually have happening is effectively people standing up brick and mortar shops with zero marginal cost. And so people come on Whatnot and they kind of have experiences like I had, which is in one night, I sold more stuff than I had ever sold before. And you're like, wow. And you start to like scale and build a business. And so, we have tens of thousands, maybe even more sellers. And 1 in 10 of our sellers on Whatnot actually just live streams on Whatnot full-time as their job. Like that's it. Like that is their full-time job. Many of them who started, they would have had comic book shops or vintage shops, and many of them even closed down their shops or then like turned their shops into like their warehouse and streaming facilities.
Yeah. And aren't there a couple of folks just doing ridiculous volume? Is there anything you can share about some of these case studies or proprietary?
Our very biggest seller did over 9 figures last year. To give you a
9 figures? You got to say it louder, man.
9 figures, yeah. And so that kind of gives you a sense of the scale. And as I said at the beginning, there are many sellers doing over 8 figures. And it's when you think about it comes back to like providing something valuable to your users. When you think about it, what you're doing is you're allowing people to set up effectively what is a brick and mortar shop for zero cost that can reach anyone in the world. And so that's an incredibly powerful kind of value proposition.
Yeah, I guess one theme to kind of touch on, again, for the audience, I know that different people are up to different things. Let's talk about earning customers for life and community building, because I do think this is a big theme that a lot of people think about. They're like, oh, we're a community, or our thing is a community. And they say that, but it's not always actually a community. Can you define some of this terminology and how you put this into practice at your business that might be applicable to folks?
So, I think one, I'm a huge fan of YC because I think YC builds the right fundamentals into you as you build a company. And one of the first fundamentals is, are you talking to your users? Are you listening to them? And so we did that in the early days of the company. And it's a thing that we make sure happens as we hire and scale the company. So every person at Whatnot is required to live sell. Every person at Whatnot is required to buy. Luckily, we do give people budget for those things. And then every team that's building a product is required to get user feedback and talk to our users. So just give you like an example of some of the stuff that happens at Whatnot on a day-to-day basis. One of the top favorite sellers at Whatnot is this guy called Blazendary. And Blazendary is like a 19-year-old kid who runs a multi-million-dollar business selling sneakers and streetwear. And our engineering team is kind of obsessed with him. We've had some issues with him scaling his business, and our teams had to work with him a bunch. But they watch his streams every night. And in one of the streams, he was complaining about how a thing was too slow and it wasn't optimized for him running his show. And literally our team in 15, it was a couple small code changes. Our team in 15 minutes at 9 o'clock at night shipped the change to him, and he went absolutely nuts. And so, I think at the end of the day, it just boils down to providing a bunch of value to people and doing that as fast as possible and not letting things stand in the way of doing it. And so we always, whether it's me or my co-founder or our team, we always encourage people to stay close to our users and be unencumbered to deliver value to them.
I think that's great. And again, I don't know how many folks here are startup founders out of curiosity, just so I know. Okay, good, helpful, thank you. So in terms of startup advice for people that are founders, since there's a lot of us here, obviously not everyone is building a consumer marketplace. Are there any lessons from getting this 0 to 1 and doing it right that you would share with folks? Yeah.
Look, as I said, I think there's a few foundational principles, and certainly the things that, like, when I talk with people, I'm constantly saying. One, which some of these I'm just stealing. Always talk to your customers. 2, make sure you can really clearly articulate the value that you're going to provide to your customers, and it's not enough to say, like, I built a marketplace, everyone's going to come. You have to, like, know what the value is and the steps to get there, and be able to articulate them. You might not always be right, but you want to iterate, those steps along the way. You're going to have to work really, 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 really hard. It is unnatural to create a company that grows exponentially and competes with a bunch of companies that make billions of dollars. And so, me and my co-founder, and even to this day, we tend to, unless it's something that delivers user value or helps grow the business, we don't do it. Full stop. Like, that is it. And because any of the distractions in between are just that, distractions, because those are just the 2 fundamentals. So I think that maybe the 4th one I'd add in is you need to think about the product and the growth motion together. Like, product market fit is both, have you created something valuable and do you know how to grow it? And so I often see that some people, disaggregate the 2.
Great. And then, look, you were part of a really cool YC batch, which is nice, and there's lots of other good companies in there. Again, any lessons you learned from seeing all these other founders and being a part of this community, like people you learned from, or things you didn't learn from being around, this community? I'd probably come back to maybe I'll frame it this way. When I have a problem, the thing that I always look to is to find someone who is an expert in that problem and has seen a lot of either repetitions at that or has solved it themselves. And so one of the values of being in YC is that there's few people who've had that many repetitions at bat. And so, seeing and learning from people who have done the thing and done it, and not just done the thing well, and, like, emphasis on that, because you need to, like, focus on that, is incredibly, incredibly valuable. And then, one of the nice things tends to be is if you're going to start a big business, there's so many unknowns that you will need help from people along the way. And so usually people like to pay it forward in some capacity too, like Dalton. Oh, thanks. Okay, so I think we got time. My last thing that I kind of wanted to close with, since I think we're low on time here, is look, man, I think sometimes if you're in the audience or if you're watching startups, it just seems like the kind of people that are on stage always had it made and everything went perfect and you're just lucky. And, like, I know because I was there just how formidable you guys were and just how, like, tough you were when things weren't going well. So do you have any, like, final thoughts for folks that maybe they don't sense that everything's going perfectly on why they should stay optimistic and keep cranking on their startup?
A lot of things are going to go wrong. I think for me it was that most of the people who make it to the other side just dealt with an inordinate amount of garbage, and that is just part of the thing. For me, I love the build, and I think if you love the thing that you're doing, you can get through a bunch of that. And just, I guess know that everyone goes through it. Even today, I'm going to leave here, and there's like 10 things that are, like, really hard that I have to go and deal with, and you have to love the build and then also know that it's never going to get easier. It just continues to get harder. And so be ready and be ready to kind of tackle those things.
Boom. I think that's time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.